What if the people who were supposed to know you best erased you? What if your own sister rewrote your life story, publicly, and the world believed her? And what if you could prove every lie wrong without saying a word? Hi, I'm Rachel Monroe. I'm a lieutenant general in the U.S. Army Cyber Division. But last week, I was just Rachel, attending a 20-year high school reunion where no one even remembered what I became. Not even my family, especially not my sister. The hotel was a glass-wrapped monstrosity, too expensive for the town, too proud for its age. I arrived alone. No entourage, no dress blues, just a simple navy sheath, a pair of low heels, and a name tag that read, Rachel Monroe, class of 2004. No rank, no recognition. I wasn't there to impress. I was there to see, to measure the gap between who they remembered me as and who I actually became. The ballroom glittered like a prom redo. Polished marble, champagne towers, a photo booth with props. And then came the voice that always stole the room. Let's give it up for our keynote speaker tonight, Deputy Communications Director for the California AG's office, Madison Monroe. Yep, my little sister. She walked up in a silk red gown, every hair in place. Her smile, strategic, always had been. I want to thank my family, especially my sister who's here tonight. She always marched to the beat of her own drum. Literally, she joined the army instead of going to Yale. Laughter. I could tell who found it funny and who just pretended to. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. I took my seat at table 14. It was near the exit and the dessert trays. No one asked what I did for a living. One guy, I think his name was Travis, looked at my name tag and said, "Didn't you drop out of college? I thought you went into admin on a military base somewhere." I smiled, thinly, took a sip of sparkling water. He didn't deserve an answer. They never really wanted to know me. They just needed a version of me that made their stories feel better. In truth, I've served in 7 countries, briefed 2 presidents, intercepted live cyber attacks in real time. I hold a clearance so classified, most people wouldn't recognize the name of the program if I shouted it in Times Square, but I don't shout. That night, though, the shouting came in a different form. Through my phone. 3 buzzes. Secure line. Pentagon clearance. I slipped it open under the table. The world didn't care that I was surrounded by shrimp cocktails and name tags. It cared about the breach in a comms relay off the Baltic coast. Back in my hotel room, I reviewed the file. Then I saw it, tagged under Public Narrative Risk. A podcast. New. Uploaded less than 4 hours ago. Title: The Myth of My Sister. Author: Madison Monroe. I knew the voice before I hit play. Madison had made a career out of bending truth with grace. This time, she implied I wore my uniform like a costume, that I popped up when I needed validation, that my absence from family events was selfish, narcissistic, calculated. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The real blow didn't come from the podcast. It came from Melissa, an old friend who became a civil rights attorney in D.C. She found me in the lobby after the dinner, still in the same navy dress, still invisible to most. "I heard Madison's podcast," she said quietly, but something didn't sit right. So I checked. She showed me an email dated 2018 from Madison, requesting that my name be withdrawn from a Medal of Honor nomination on my behalf. It was forged. The signature, the language, everything. I stared at the screen, not in shock, in clarity. Madison didn't just lie. She tried to erase me. Let's pause. This isn't just about me or Madison. It's about how women, especially in leadership, get erased. Not by war, but by whispers. Not by force, but by family. A Harvard Business Review study showed that over 60% of women in high-ranking leadership roles report being undermined not by colleagues, but by people closest to them. Siblings, spouses, even parents. We think betrayal looks dramatic, but it often sounds like, "She's just doing that for attention," or "Don't believe everything you read online," or worse, "She's not really that important." Sound familiar? This is the part no one talks about. I didn't sleep that night, not out of anger, but duty. The breach I'd been alerted to? It connected to an operation I ran 12 years ago, classified under Project Meridian Echo. Only 5 people on Earth knew what it involved. And one of those people was me. That morning, a message came through. Lieutenant General Monroe, recall authorized. Civilian breach escalated. Immediate response required. The timing was no accident. The world had remembered me, even if Madison tried to make it forget. The school auditorium smelled like new carpet and old ambition. Red banners hung from the rafters, stitched with gold thread, celebrating 20 years of leadership and legacy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Folding chairs stretched into rows so straight they looked algorithmic. I stood in the back, arms folded across my chest, watching Madison hold court from the stage. Cream-colored pantsuit, pearl earrings, posture locked, voice smooth as ever. She opened with a smile that wasn't meant for anyone in particular. It was just part of her costume. "Real leadership," she said, "isn't about secrecy or mystique. It's about being seen, being present." Applause, measured, obligatory. She paused, just long enough for the cameras to get their shot. I once knew someone who thought leadership meant staying silent. But silence creates myths, and myths can be dangerous. It wasn't even subtle. Melissa sat near the front. She gave me a small nod. That was the green light. I stepped into the aisle. You'd think a high school auditorium wouldn't be intimidating for someone who's faced foreign generals in negotiation rooms and stared down threats with a clipboard and a sidearm. But this was different. This wasn't about strategy or rank. This was personal. Every eye turned. Some faces squinted, confused. Others froze. Recognition dawning like a slow storm. Madison's face went white. I didn't say a word. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the edge of the stage and opened the folder in my hand. First, a photo. Me in full dress uniform. Standing beside General Albrecht at NATO Cyber Command. Silver star pinned to my chest. I held it up, slowly. The room stilled. Then, a printout. My real Medal of Honor nomination file. Not the forged withdrawal Madison had sent in my name, but the actual submission, complete with timestamps, command endorsements, and traceable sender logs. I took a breath, stepped to the mic, and spoke. "My name is Rachel Monroe," I began, voice steady. Class of 2004, orchestra co-chair, captain of debate, founder of our Model UN. A few people chuckled nervously. Some of you thought I dropped out. Others thought I vanished. The truth is, I chose a life where visibility wasn't a privilege. I served where no cameras went, no parades, just protocols and encrypted doors. I paused. Let that settle. Silence wasn't cowardice, it was a shield. And sometimes it was the only thing standing between the chaos and the people we love. Eyes flicked between me and Madison. Some people already knew what was coming, but I kept going. Madison didn't just forget to mention my service, she erased it. She requested my name be removed from recognition records. She told this school I didn't want gasps. I don't need this podium, I don't need applause, but I won't let someone rewrite my story because silence made it easy to manipulate. I stepped down. Still no thunderous applause, just breathless stillness. Outside, the wind began to rise. I'd seen that pattern before. Rotor wash. Sure enough, the hum began low, like distant thunder. Then a roar. The auditorium windows rattled. People ran toward the doors, drinks in hand, phones raised, chatter rising. And then, contact. A black helicopter with no insignia landed on the lawn, blades slicing the night. No pomp, no announcement, just precision. A man stepped out. Colonel Damon Ellison, my former commanding officer. He walked through the chaos like a man who didn't need to explain himself. Boots polished, ribbons gleaming. He stopped 3 feet in front of me, saluted sharply. "Lieutenant General Monroe, ma'am. Pentagon requests your immediate presence. Priority intel breach. Extraction authorized." Someone near the dessert table dropped a wine glass. Madison's voice cracked through the tension. "Wait, what did he just say?" She pushed forward, heels abandoned, eyes wide. "Rachel, you're in the military?" I turned slowly. "I thought you liked fiction, Madison. Let me give you a fact." Jason, my former high school boyfriend, looked like someone had just told him the earth was flat. "I had no idea," he stammered. "We all thought—" "You didn't think," I replied. "You accepted the version that fit your narrative, because it was easier." Colonel Ellison handed me a sealed folder. "Target movement confirmed. Possible Orion data leak. Merlin is active." My pulse didn't spike. My training held. Madison reached out. "Rachel, General, wait. We should talk." I didn't flinch. "I spent 20 years letting you talk over me. That ends now." Let me pause again. When women are erased in public spaces, it's not always with malice. Often it's with confidence, a calm voice, a curated narrative. A Princeton study found that men are 3 geeks more likely to be credited with ideas in professional settings, even when women originated them. In family dynamics, the stats don't even exist, because no one's studying it. But ask any woman who's made herself small for the comfort of others. She'll tell you, erasure feels like politeness, until it feels like betrayal. The helicopter blades whirled louder. Colonel Ellison gestured. "Wheels up in 60, ma'am." I gave Madison one last look. No hate, no revenge, just finality. Melissa appeared near the edge of the crowd, holding up a phone, red recording dot blinking. "She wasn't hiding," Melissa called out. "She was serving." Applause began. Slowly. Not viral, not cinematic, but honest. One cadet in the crowd whispered, "She's real." I stepped into the helicopter. Didn't look back. Some stories don't need to be shouted. They just need to be witnessed. The south lawn was still. Too still. Like it knew something sacred was about to happen. Rows of white chairs lined up in military symmetry. Brass gleamed under the early sunlight. The flag barely fluttered, held stiff by the weight of the moment. I stood near the platform. Full dress uniform, white gloves, silver insignia. Everything in its place. Just like the past 20 years of my life. Only this time, I wasn't stepping into a classified room. I was stepping into the light. No more shadows. No more silence. The president's voice carried across the lawn. "Today, we honor not just a soldier, but a sentinel. One who carried burdens we weren't allowed to witness, but which protected everything we take for granted." I didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Lieutenant General Rachel Monroe chose silence, not to disappear, but to serve. I felt it before I heard it. The crowd's breath caught. And then, he placed the ribbon around my neck. The Medal of Honor doesn't feel heavy, not physically, but the weight of it? It's not just what you did, it's what it cost. Years away from home, days you couldn't explain, moments you missed on purpose because the mission came first. And yet, there I stood, receiving the very medal my sister once tried to bury. I didn't look at the crowd for validation, but I caught her face anyway. Madison, third row. No pearls, no podium, just folded hands and unreadable eyes. Next to her, Melissa, holding a leather-bound manuscript, leading without applause. The book we co-wrote, based on stories from real veterans who had been ignored, silenced, misrepresented. People like me. One of those stories belonged to Colonel James Brennan. He spent 30 years as an intelligence officer, ran covert ops in Cold War Berlin. He died in a nursing home. No flag, no salute. His own children never knew what he did. We found his records, declassified through FOIA. He'd prevented a nuclear false flag incident. No one had thanked him. When we reached out to his daughter, she cried. Not because he was forgotten, but because he had never told her who he really was. I thought he just sold insurance, she whispered. This isn't rare, it's the rule. Because the greatest sacrifices are rarely televised. After the applause faded and the cameras turned away, I slipped behind the briefing annex, down a gravel path flanked by hedges. There was a bench there, half in sun, half in shade. I sat, and for the first time in years I exhaled. Not just oxygen, but weight, guilt, silence. Moments later, I heard footsteps. Slow, hesitant. Madison. She didn't ask to sit. She just did. No cameras, no audience. Just us. She slid a small envelope into my gloved hand. Inside, a photo. 2 girls. One in camo face paint. One in plastic boots. Halloween? Maybe 91. One girl grinning wide. The other, me, standing in a mock salute. She didn't say anything for a long time. I found it last month, she said. Almost threw it out. I studied it. Time had softened the colors, but not the memory. I didn't know how to stand next to you, she murmured. So I tried to outshine you. Loudly. Desperately. Still no apology, but maybe that wasn't what I needed. You didn't have to outshine me, I said. You just had to show up. Honestly. She nodded. Quietly. No hugs. No tears. But something passed between us. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. And sometimes, that's the real start. Let me pause again. Everyone loves a story with a neat little bow. But in real life, closure isn't a moment. It's a process. It doesn't come with speeches or ceremonies. It comes in parking lots, on benches, in faded photos you almost threw away. Psychologists call this relational repair. It's not about rewriting the past. It's about acknowledging it without excuses. Because we can't grow from something we refuse to name. That evening, I arrived at my new post, Fort Drake. No cameras, no crowd. Just a training center, 40 cadets, and a plaque above the door. Ethics in Strategic Command. I ran my hand across the podium, felt the weight of purpose, not performance. I didn't need a title anymore. I had clarity. Because real command, it isn't about barking orders. It's about presence, precision, and showing up even when no one claps. And this time, they did. Weeks later, they added a new plaque in the school's legacy hall. No press release, no ceremony, just a hallway filled with echoes. The plaque read, Rachel Monroe, Integrity and Silence. No list of medals, no stats, just truth. Madison stepped to the podium quietly. She served without needing to be seen, she read. But today, we choose to see her. Not for her rank, but for what she carried when no one was watching. And for once, she didn't perform. She witnessed. A cadet leaned toward me after the dedication. Barely 19. Eyes full of fire. Ma'am, you're the reason I applied. I nodded. Didn't speak. That was enough. Because legacy? It's not carved in stone. It's lived in moments. And when you've lived long enough in silence, being seen, honestly seen, is the loudest sound in the world. 3 weeks after the Medal of Honor ceremony, I was mid-lecture at Fort Drake. We were discussing asymmetric warfare strategies when my phone buzzed. 3 short vibrations. Clearance, Echo 1 priority. I excused myself. The cadets didn't ask questions. They knew enough to stay curious, not intrusive. In my office, the secure line blinked. Civilian intercept confirms reactivation of Meridian Echo signatures. Requesting your analysis on potential resurgence of Operation Merlin. Merlin. That name hadn't crossed anyone's lips in over a decade, because technically it didn't exist, and for good reason. I closed the blinds, logged into the system. There it was. Patterns, flags, signals, different from before, but unmistakably connected. Someone had revived a sleeping operation, someone without authorization. Let me tell you something they don't teach you in leadership school. The most dangerous threats don't arrive in tanks or drones. They arrive as podcasts, memos, leaked narratives, corrupted truths. Disinformation isn't just digital, it's emotional. It attacks identity before it attacks systems. Operation Merlin had been about data sovereignty. We'd buried it deep after an Allied breach almost dismantled a voting system overseas. Only 5 of us were read in. Now, pieces were resurfacing on civilian servers. That meant someone wanted the truth to go public. But not the truth. A version of it. And after what happened with Madison, I knew exactly how dangerous curated versions of truth could be. I made the calls. Colonel Ellison, Major Kyle Tran, retired. Commander Noor Salim, working in cyber defense out of Dubai. Within 72 hours, we were back in a secured virtual environment. "We don't have time for ceremonies," Noor said bluntly. "Merlin wasn't supposed to wake up." "It didn't," I replied. "Someone fed it." Ellison shared screen, cross-referenced timestamps and metadata. They traced back not just to foreign IPs, but to an academic journal article citing anonymized military silence studies, a paper based heavily on a public narrative, one that Madison had unknowingly helped shape through her podcast. She had triggered the exposure, without knowing the stakes, and now it was our mess to clean up. I booked a flight. I didn't go in uniform. Just jeans, a blazer, and a quiet conviction. Madison answered the door, confused. Her apartment overlooked downtown Sacramento, modern, curated, minimal, much like her reputation. "You're here?" she said, like I was a ghost. "We need to talk." I laid it out. How her narrative had been scraped by foreign bots, how her storytelling, designed to frame me, had been weaponized as a case study in disinformation. "You didn't just insult me," I said. "You handed ammunition to people trying to fracture this country." To her credit, she didn't deflect. She didn't cry. She listened. When I finished, she walked to her desk, pulled out a folder. "I've been working on something," she said. "It's not redemption, but maybe it's contribution." Inside was a draft manuscript, When Silence Wasn't Empty, Stories from the Edge of Visibility. It wasn't about her. It was about us. People like me. One story stood out. Agnes Bloom, a high school librarian who spent World War II breaking codes for the Navy. She never told anyone, not even her husband. After she died, her granddaughter found a medal in a dusty box and a handwritten cipher chart. The only record was in a declassified archive labeled Auxiliary. Today, there's a digital memorial with her story on it because someone finally chose to see her. Not clap for her, see her. Recognition isn't about ego, it's about accuracy, it's about truth. Psychologists say that acknowledgement, especially after moral injury, isn't optional. It's essential to healing. When people are erased from history, the damage isn't just personal, it's cultural. It teaches the next generation that silence equals absence, and it doesn't. Silence often means sacrifice. A month later, I returned to Legacy Hall. No ceremony, just me and Melissa. A new display had been added beside my plaque. It read, "In honor of those who led quietly." Below were 5 names, newly reinstated, people the school had once overlooked, people Madison had once helped remove. She stood nearby, not saying much. This time, her presence wasn't performative, it was participatory. She handed Melissa a thumb drive. "More stories," she said, "if you're still collecting them." Melissa nodded. "Always." Later that week, one of my students approached me after class. Young, eager, quiet in a way that wasn't insecurity. It was observant. "General Monroe," she said, "is it hard, being invisible on purpose?" I smiled. "Harder is learning when it's time to stop." She nodded slowly. "I think I want to serve that way too. Not for applause, just for impact." That was the moment I knew. The silence had finally spoken. In the final part, I'll reveal what happened when the story we helped shape finally went public, and how it sparked something much bigger than a medal or a reunion. It sparked a movement. The week the book dropped, it didn't hit any bestseller lists. There were no flashy launches, no celebrity endorsements. Just a quiet upload on Veterans Day, leading without applause. A collection of stories from service members, intelligence operatives, code breakers, and medics who had operated in silence. Our goal wasn't fame. It was record correction. The manuscript Madison once tried to erase became the cornerstone of a national awareness campaign. The Department of Defense even reached out to distribute digital copies to bases and academies. One general said it changed the way he thought about invisible service. But the part that really got me? The handwritten note I received from a 10th grader in Missouri. "I thought my grandma was just quiet. Then I read your story and realized she was brave. Thank you." That was everything. One of the most powerful submissions came from a man named Will Daniels. He worked as a janitor in a Chicago middle school. Nobody knew that 10 years earlier he'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a field encryption analyst. He saved hundreds of lives with algorithms he wrote between patrols. He never mentioned it, until his students stumbled across his name in our book. Now, he's mentoring kids in cyber literacy. Still quiet, still powerful. I learned something in all of this. When you reclaim your story, you give other people permission to look for theirs. We're all living inside someone else's assumptions until we challenge them. People assumed I dropped out, that I faded away, that I was bitter, aimless, maybe even broken. Why? Because the truth required effort, and the lie required none. That's how erasure works. But when we tell the truth, quietly, boldly, it doesn't just correct the record, it shifts the culture. Back at Fort Drake, my classroom filled up faster each week. Not just with cadets, with questions. What's the difference between secrecy and invisibility? How do you serve without losing yourself? How do you lead without being seen? I didn't have perfect answers, but I told them this. Sometimes leadership isn't about being in front. It's about holding the line when others walk away. They listened. Phones off. Pens still. Because they weren't watching for rank. They were watching for truth. 6 months later, the school invited me back. Not to speak. To observe. A new scholarship was being announced. The Monroe Grant for Invisible Leadership. Funded anonymously. I had my suspicions, but I said nothing. Madison sat in the front row. This time, not as a speaker. Just as a sister. When the principal mentioned my name, the applause wasn't thunderous. It was steady. Sincere. A teacher leaned over to a student and said, She changed this place without asking to. I heard it. I'll never forget it. You might be wondering, why tell this story now? Because every day someone gets edited out of their own life, by family, by employers, by society, and most never speak up. But here's the thing. Speaking up doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't even mean going viral. Sometimes it's writing your name back into the record, one page at a time. Sometimes it's giving your truth room to stand in a world too noisy to hear anything unpolished. That's what I did. And now, others are doing it too. If you've ever been overlooked, misunderstood, or rewritten into a version of yourself that you didn't recognize, this story is your reminder. You're not invisible. You were just doing the hard work where no one was watching, and we see you now. So, if this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know or someone you used to be, I want you to do 3 things. Like this video, comment below with your story, or someone's you think should be told subscribe, because we're building a space where quiet heroes are finally heard. And remember, the world may not clap for ghosts, but legacy doesn't need applause. It just needs truth.